will only be an excellent facility if all these members that are around here are part of it. That's the bottom line. Yeah. Thank you, Krista. It was lovely having you guys down here. And we've got a tractor parade coming up just now. I've got a tractor for each of you guys. Yeah, it might break down, but that's your problem to get it fixed and drive it back. No, but after the meeting, we're going to fire up some tractors, and we've got some tractors for each of you guys. We're going to do a little convoy drive. Right. Are you done? Thank you, Krista from Taptec. Thank you, Engine. It was wonderful having you here today. And I'm sure next year Kevin is going to get 3 guys. Okay guys, the moment is horizon. Behind us is an engine that came out of Natal University. Well, let me go back to the beginning. In the 1890s, a company called Mirrlees, Watson and Yaran signed an agreement with Dr. Rudolf Diesel to build a diesel engine in the UK using his patent. So in 1897, they signed the agreement, and a year later they had the first diesel engine in the UK built. Same design as that. That's the 50 horse, that one was the 20 horse. That motor still exists. It's in the Anson Engine Museum in the UK. It was the first diesel engine built under Dr. Rudolf Diesel's patent in the UK, and the third diesel engine built in the world. So they then started selling diesel engines, and the business took off. So they didn't have the resources and the space, so Charles Day, the financial manager, got hold of Henry Bickerton. Henry Bickerton is the guy that's responsible for National Engines. He financed the company, and they changed it to Mirrlees Bickerton and Day. 1906, the company was formed, and they moved and continue building these diesel engines. What's unique about these engines is that same design they were building up into the late 20s, into the 30s. This engine is shipped out of the UK in 1930 to 1931. So the documentation said it was bench tested in 1930. I've seen those documents, and shipped in 1931. We're led to believe that the engine might be a 1915 engine. And there's supposed to be a number stamped on the crank, but to get to it we've got to dig into it deep, which maybe one day we'll discover that. So the bottom line is these engines are built in a multi-cylinder format, which means basically the crankshaft and the base plate you can change, and you can just add cylinders. And they built them up to 6 cylinders. They were used in ships, pumping stations in the UK. A number of these things went to India for irrigation schemes. Currently, according to the Anson Engine Museum in the UK, they are only aware of 6 of these engines in the world in running condition, or be able to run. So they're busy restoring one, and there's another one that's complete and will be able to run. That's 6. This is one of the 6. The only one in Africa. So basically what happened was, this was shipped to Natal, then it was called Natal Technical College in 1930 or 31. They used it in mechanical engineering for various testing and so on. But as time went on, the computer came around, and everything they did on this engine you can now emulate on a computer. So they had no use for it. It's been standing for the last 20-25 years. It's been standing. It hasn't been used. And they need the space. In fact, they replaced the space that this thing came out of, a CNC machine is going in. What a contradiction. Right? Anyway, so they approached us in the beginning of 2020, February 2020. They had 3 options: sell the machine, auction it off, or put it into preservation. And they preferred the preservation, simply so the machine wouldn't be scrapped. That's the fear. Putting it out to open auction, some guy buys it, it's 12 tons. 12 tons of steel when you get it for cheap. Yeah, and then it's gone. But then, so we started the negotiations, and then COVID came to town. Everything was shelved for 2 years. Whilst we went into lockdown, and the whole project was stalled. April of 2022, they contacted me again and said, let's resume. So we had some meetings, passed some documents between us, and the engine was out. That was the start. We had no idea how we were going to move it, how much it was going to cost to move, but we were going to move it. We were going to move it. So we got hold of some rigging companies, and round one, in 2020, I've spoken to 5 or 6 different rigging companies, and Lovemore Brothers came to town, and they were only too happy to help us with a quote that was 40 grand cheaper than anybody else. Come 2022, they hold the price. They said, no, they'll move it. It took 2 days to move it. What they moved it for, I think their fuel bill was more. They had 4 guys, a truck, trailer, forklifts. It took us a few months to get the concrete plinth, the diagrams for the concrete plinth. The varsity had no records, had nothing. I was getting information out of the UK, and eventually they managed to find some documents at the varsity. So that concrete underneath there is 20 cubic meters of concrete underneath that engine. 22,000 rands worth of concrete underneath that engine. So eventually we started digging the hole. We needed the hole. Before we could move it, we had to have the hole. It had to be set. It had to stand for a month or two for the concrete to set. So, I mean, there's rebar underneath there. I don't know how many tons of rebar inside that thing. So eventually we started stripping the engine. And so from April 2022, that's when the real thing started. And then over the next few months, we started stripping all the bits and pieces, all the pipes, all the groundwork. We basically left the engine standing on its own. Lovemore came in. We pulled the flywheel off. The flywheel weighs 6 tons. So we pulled the flywheel off, and, they pulled it off. Very professionally. Loaded on a truck, took the whole day to get out the varsity, because where it was in the building, it was a narrow driveway on the ground floor. The engine stands 2.7 meters high. The roof of the door height was 2.5 meters. So they couldn't take it out. And that's 2.7, and it's still the crank is in the ground. The sump is underneath in the ground. So they lay it over. To lay it over, we removed the window, and they stuck the boom through the window, and then lifted it. And then they used the forklift to flip it on its side, put on rollers, and then wheeled it out. And then took the crane back out the window and put it on the truck, and then did the reverse for the flywheel. So it was quite an operation. Took the whole day to get it out. And then the next day they brought it here. And it took almost the whole day. We stripped the roof off the shed. We had to raise the height of the shed anyway. Yeah, you're all looking at that.
David?
Don't mention my name.
Those 2 bottles weigh 700 kgs. We used the forklift. Well, they put it in, no problem, but he came out with the stack up high. Anyway, we'll fix it. So it took us months and months with jackhammers, because the engine was sitting in concrete, to chisel it out and to strip it down. Loads of spares. The little shed over here was absolutely packed with Mirrlees parts. And once it's here, we got it here in November last year, and October last year, and we've been working weekend after weekend after weekend. It doesn't look like as much, but let me tell you what, I'd hate to know how many man hours we put into that machine. So today, that engine, if we would donate, we had some cash donations, we've had some sponsorship on bits and pieces, materials being donated, and the club has dumped a whack of money into this engine. At the moment that engine sitting as you see it, is cost about, excluding man hours, no labor, 120,000 rand to move that engine. Right? But we were going to move it. It had to be moved. We'll hear it run. We ran it for the first time yesterday, and after putting it back together, and the first time in at least 25 years. Very fortunate to have Ralph Barnes here, who's retired from Natal University. He looked after it at Natal University. So, yeah, look at it, he's still looking after it. He's up the top. Yeah. So as I said, it's an extremely rare engine. We're extremely privileged to have it here. Our work has not stopped. We're still going to enclose to run the compressor on the back to put air in the tank. We pumped the tanks to 60 bar. 60 bar. A little bit more than you put in your car tires. Guys, should we start it?
Make it go bang.
So it's an air blast diesel injection system. So the diesel core that you've got is directly injected in from a rail or whatever into the engine. This thing is fired from an air blast with the diesel into the engine. It's a feature that disappeared in the mid-1930s. And I'll put on the fuel, it's already been primed, and the tanks on the right hand side, the tubing tanks, we'll use one of them, that's the air side. So the air injects into the cylinder and it turns the engine. The little one at the back will inject the fuel into the engine.
Thank you.
That's just an air pressure valve that is released in there. The engine runs at 200, it's a 50 watts, 250 RPM. It's a single cylinder.
Yeah, well done, Rick. That thing would be vibrating